3 Syrian soldiers dead after alleged Israeli airstrikes hit sites near the coastal city of Tartus, near the border between Lebanon and Syria. Another airstrike near Damascus itself. The reports come by Saudi-owned El Arabiya media. They're saying that the strikes were carried out by Israeli jets over Lebanon. It happened Sunday evening. Multiple explosions were heard. Anonymous Syrian sources told Reuters the strikes were aimed at Iranian bases and a radar station nearby. The Damascus strike supposedly aimed at Iranian proxy militia Hezbollah-owned outpost in the region. The reported strikes coming just days after Syrian media reported that Israeli tanks had targeted observation posts in Syria's Quneitra region near the border with Israel. Now, for more on this, we are joined by our correspondent, Jonathan Regev, to break this down a little bit more. Now, Jonathan, tell us a little bit what's going on here. How common are these allegations of Israeli strikes in the region?
The allegations are common. Even this way of operation is common, of strikes coming, the strikes coming from Lebanese airspace. All that is common. Something that is a bit uncommon. The hour, usually it happened at around 8:50 p.m. local time. Usually these things happen in the middle of the night, much later. And now it happens just before 9 p.m. That is one thing. Second thing, not for the first time, but not very common, the strike in the port city of Tartus. Why so? The Russian presence. Russia has very strong presence in 2 places along the coast. One is in Tartus, a port city. The other is in Latakia, where the Russians have a very big air base. These 2 places, Israel does operate in them, allegedly, but is very careful. Of course, the last thing you'd want to do is hit Russian targets in the area. If Tartus was hit, and again, it's not very common, but not for the first time, we can assume that shipments coming from the sea have arrived to the port there, possibly making their way into Lebanon. Lebanon is not too far south of Tartus, the Lebanese border. We can assume that these are some kind of shipments meant for Hezbollah, maybe components for precision-guided missiles. That is one thing. The strike in the Damascus area, much more common. This is a place where Israel, again, according to foreign reports, operates all the time, especially near the area of the Damascus airport, where we know that shipments coming from Iran usually land and then make their way on land to Lebanon. Again, the Lebanese border not too far from Damascus either. So these strikes, the one in Damascus, very common. The one in Tartus, not so common. But once again, not the first time that Israel has operated there. Again, if Israel is behind this strike, no comment from Israel as is usual in these cases.
Now, we say that strikes themselves are common. That's pretty much undebatable, because we have seen these strikes on equipment many times in the past. But how common is it that you see Syrian soldiers that are dead in these strikes? Usually we hear about equipment, but if we see actual members of the Syrian government, such as their armed forces, getting killed in this attack, are we expecting any sort of response from Syria?
It could happen. Usually Syria keeps quiet. The fact that Syrian soldiers have been killed could prompt some kind of a response from Syria. It's not the first time that soldiers are killed. It's not the first time that Syrian soldiers are killed. Usually Syria keeps quiet when it comes to response, but we can also assume that, just like in the case of the Islamic Jihad in Gaza, their patrons in Tehran will urge them to respond. Syria knows that it has a lot to lose if it gets into a military confrontation with Israel, so we may see some kind of response, but Syria will be very, very careful before carrying such a retaliation.